Hello everybody and welcome to Parks Bros. It's Drew here, and today we're going to be heading back to SeaWorld San Antonio in San Antonio, Texas for Wavebreaker the Rescue Coaster and my official review. Wavebreaker the Rescue Coaster is an awesome little family launch coaster which takes you out on the water like you're riding a jet ski as part of SeaWorld's rescue team trying to save an animal. Now I say an animal instead of a specific one for something that I'll get into a little later, but we gotta find this Intamin coaster, so let's find out how to get there. So if you didn't know, on SeaWorld San Antonio property there are technically 3 different parks. SeaWorld San Antonio proper, Aquatica, the water park, and Discovery Point, which is where you can swim with dolphins, and actually there's an amazing aquarium there as well. But we want to go to SeaWorld San Antonio, which means right after you go underneath that incredible arch and through security, you'll want to make a right heading toward a wave statue with the main entrance sign. Now, once you get into the park itself after passing that sign, you want to pretty much walk straight past some bathrooms as well as past the Sea Lion Amphitheater, which will then head next to a small restaurant and gift shop. Soon after that, you'll find yourself just outside of their indoor theater, which is where you'll get your first glimpse of the lake that this coaster sits atop. Soon you'll come across the lift hill of Steel Eel, which you'll want to walk right underneath, and this is where you'll get your first glimpse of the ride itself on your right hand side. But you're not at the entrance yet. Keep walking down that main pathway, even past the entrance of Penguin Encounter, and soon after that you'll find the main entrance to Wavebreaker, the rescue coaster, on your right hand side, right across from a refreshment and food location. Well, we've made it to the entrance successfully, so that's step 1. Step 2, if you have a bag or any item that is bigger than a phone, wallet, keys, or sunglasses without straps, you will need to purchase a locker to ride this ride. Now, those lockers can be found just to the left of the entrance, but it is something to note. If you are trying to bring a bag onto this ride and into this queue, you will not be allowed. Now, let's talk about that front entrance way because we've made it there. This entrance is adorned with 2 giant LED screens on both sides of the entrance, and I gotta say, they make some cool effects and can even show off seasonal promotions, which I think SeaWorld uses to their benefit. But it is at this point that you will need to split into the quick queue or regular standby line, so make sure you're in the right portion of the line, whether you have quick queue or not. Now, it's at this point that you will most likely encounter one of the longer waits in the park because this is a standout attraction for all families that visit because it's not too crazily intense like some of the other coasters in the park. But within the queue, there are a couple fun facts about different animals, the rescue team, and even the environment that the Gulf Coast is host to. And in addition to that, you'll find some nice plant life, and that's about it. Now, theming is something you'll hear me talk about a lot when I talk about this ride, because realistically, compared to its counterpart Manta at SeaWorld San Diego, at least at the time of recording, theming for Wavebreaker is not necessarily its strong suit. But at the end of this queue, there is a stairway that you will need to go up to reach the station. Now, the station itself is quite basic, but once you're in your certain row, this is when you'll get on. Now, Wavebreaker the Rescue Coaster hosts some really interesting trains to a lot of people because they market it as a jet ski coaster. Now, a jet ski coaster is something you can ride like a jet ski, where you lean forward and grab the handlebars and feel the full intensity of those turns. And while you might think that you have to straddle a seat in this position, you actually really don't. Sure, there is a little divider near your feet, but outside of that, it's really just a basic roller coaster seat with support only going halfway up your back. But in terms of restraints on this roller coaster, there is only a lap bar, which is a T-bar restraint, meaning that the restraint that sits on your lap connects to the train through one single place in the center of your seat. So yes, you will need to straddle a little bit, considering there are things in between both of your legs, but it is nothing in comparison to something like Pony Express at Knott's Berry Farm, where that ride vehicle can actually be a little difficult to get on and off at times. This is more like a traditional seat, even though it doesn't look like it. And I will say, especially in that leaning forward position, it is quite comfortable. But do remember to put all of your belongings in the little storage cubbies on the other side of the station before sitting down. But of course, once you're all strapped in and ready to go, you'll get that all clear and head out to go save some animals. So, with the beginning of this roller coaster, you'll make a right turn into a nice little pre-show. Now, I do appreciate the fact that there is a pre-show here, but I gotta say, being inside just a corrugated roof building with some TVs on either side isn't really what I would call the best theming. Now, I'm not saying this needed to be a giant research lab or anything like that, but I will say, I question the addition of the pre-show itself with how it looks. And to be honest, I would be kind of glad if there was just a quick announcement that we have to go to save some animals immediately. Instead of sitting there for a good 25 to 30 seconds, just looking at some TVs that have some quite bad glare, depending on where you're sitting on the coaster. Now, something I will praise is the fact they do have like a vinyl curtain that covers the sunlight from the front half of the train, so you don't exactly know what's coming next. So when that rolls up, you will launch out of this building with quite a lot of speed. Now, this is a family coaster, don't get me wrong, but due to the riding position, it does feel a little faster than you might expect. But this tire launch will make you feel a tiny bit of bumps while you're going upward of 30 miles an hour. And I gotta say, this first launch actually surprised me in quite a good way. But soon after this first launch, you'll be heading up to a twisting hill and coming face to face with Steel Eel, which, if that is coming down the drop, is a really cool moment to kind of duel against another coaster in the park. But immediately after that, you'll dive to the left underneath some pieces of track before doing some little S curves, which you will find a lot of these moments on this coaster. And I would say it's the main reason you should go to that riding position instead of trying to sit straight up. Because if you're sitting straight up on this coaster, I would say it's even uncomfortable because of how many S turns you're taking, because it's constant lateral motion with no upper back support. So I would say lean forward, and heck, it adds to the theming even a little bit. But after this S curve, you'll make your way to a near 180-degree left turn before banking right over the water. Oh yeah, I totally forgot to mention, everything after the pre-show is completely over the water, which makes this ride absolutely gorgeous from on and off ride. And I gotta say, it's probably one of my favorite parts of the ride itself. Not to say that the ride is bad or anything, but being over the water really does make you feel like you're on a crazy jet ski in the Gulf Coast. Now anyway, this is when you make a right bank turn, you get some more S curves before making a big left bank turn before hitting that second launch. Now, if I thought the first launch was pretty powerful for what it is, the second launch is just as much. And since you've already got speed on your side, that surprised me even more. Now, after this second launch, you kind of do the same move after the first launch. You go up in this twisting hill before diving to the left again. But that's where the similarities to the first half end. This is when you make some S curves, but immediately after the first one, you go over land for the first time since the first launch and go through an extremely intense bank turn to the left. Now, I will say this is probably the most intense turn of the ride, but that's not saying too much. It's not crazily intense or anything, but it is a little more than I expected. Now, after this, you dive under one of the bigger turns on the first half, which I think is a cool head chopper moment, before kind of just meandering with a little bump hill before going underneath the first launch. Now, this is when you go up into a little bit of floater airtime over a hill that goes over a pathway on the mainland. And after that, you make a banking and swooping right turn just into the brake run. So yes, a lot of this ride repeats itself with a lot of turns and S curves and not anything too crazy. But I will say, while it doesn't seem like much, that water setting and the launches make up for that. But anyway, with that, you're on the final brake run. Once you deboard, get your belongings, and then head down the stairs, you will find yourself in a rescue center gift shop, which really pushes that idea of the SeaWorld rescue team. But if you need anything like bags that you placed in a locker before the ride, make sure to grab those, and you've officially finished your experience with Wave Breaker, the rescue coaster. I have to say, while this ride doesn't seem like something incredible in a lot of people's minds, I do think it's quite fun. Is it the best ride in the park? No, definitely not. But I could totally see this being a star for someone who doesn't like the most intensive rides, or for someone younger who's trying out their first bigger ride. And honestly, I think it's the best coaster suited to families in the entirety of the park. Not that that's saying too much, considering the only other family coaster technically in the park is a water coaster with 2 elements. But you could even argue that it is the best all-around family coaster in San Antonio, if not all of Texas. Now, all of Texas might be a little bit of a stretch, but even comparing it to a lot of the family coasters at Six Flags Fiesta Texas, I would totally argue that Wave Breaker is the best all-around family coaster for people of all ages. It's got a little bit of intensity to thrill even the most extreme of thrill seekers, but it's not too crazy to push away some that don't want to ride the bigger and badder coasters. And while I do wish there was more in the way of theming, especially in that shaky pre-show, I will say the rest of the ride really does make up for that in its really beautiful setting, as well as in its almost relaxing ride portions. But with that, let's get into my final ratings. And if you didn't know, I have more of an unorthodox rating system where I will give this ride a ski slope rating, realistically recommending how experienced of a coaster rider you should be before riding something like this, and then a 5-star intensity rating, a 5-star fun rating, and of course an overall rating out of 10. Now up first is that ski slope rating, and this one's actually kind of tough for me. I would personally put it in between being a beginner and an intermediate rider, and while I would say at the park specifically, this is their intermediate rider ride, I think overall this is more of a beginner coaster. Now, true, it does go over 30 miles an hour and can be quite intense for someone's first coaster ever, but if you're able to ride something like Journey to Atlantis, I think you should have no problem riding something like Wave Breaker, because it doesn't have that crazy height, and while yes, it does go over the water at quite a quick pace, you still feel quite secure during the whole ride. But I will totally say, this is a little more intense than something like Thunder Mountain at Disneyland for all my California folks, but less intense than something like Manta at SeaWorld San Diego. For my Texas folks, this ride is more intense than the kiddie coasters for sure, but I don't think I would say it's more intense than something like Roadrunner Express at Six Flags Fiesta Texas. Now, I can't speak on Northern Texas at all yet, sadly, but hopefully I'll get there soon enough. But this ride to me is really the perfect step up from something that goes under 20 miles an hour. Now let's move on to the intensity rating, which I've pretty much been talking about this entire time, but I would give it a 2-star rating out of 5. And I know that might seem a little high, at least compared to what I've been saying, but I don't think I could give it a 1-star just because it does have those 2 kind of intense launches. And it does hold that speed throughout the entire ride. But that moves us to the fun rating, and I would say this is definitely more of a fun coaster overall. And for that, I would have to say it's a 3 out of 5 stars, because really more than anything, this is just an enjoyable jet ski ride that's fun for the whole family. But that moves us to my rating out of 10. This is my overall. And personally, I would say it's a straight 7 out of 10. Now, that's not a bad score at all. That's actually a great score. And yes, while it is technically the average for what I rate coasters, I would say this is definitely an above average coaster. And if you think about it, anything 5 and under is really where I'm not liking the ride, but a 7 is something I will totally ride whenever I visit the park. But with that said, I wanted to say thank you so much for watching my return to full in-depth reviews. I know it's been a while, I know I'm a little shaky, but I'm going to be trying to do one of these at least every other week for all of the roller coasters that I've yet to review, and even the dark rides and flat rides too. So let me know what you want to see me review in the very near future, because I would love to see what you guys want to see the most. But of course, until then, we'll see you on the next ride.